Hi guys, welcome back for another weekly live. I'm Giulia De Mauro, the founder of the IBD Hub, and today we are going to talk about career. And in particular, we're going to focus on architects and engineers who are currently looking for a job. Our guest today is Jennifer Noelle Garibay, which I will introduce to you in a minute. And I just wanted to state that at the end of this podcast or live, if you prefer, we're going to give people the opportunity to apply for a workshop, which is meant for architects and engineers who really want to find a job in no time. And this workshop is going to be executed on the IBD Hub platform. And there will be guests who will be there to help you out with pitching, portfolio, interviews, and so on. So if you stay until the end, I will tell you how to apply. And then you can go ahead and do that if you think that this can help you. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, actually, by the way. So I've had a lot of requests from Dubai and so on. So if you stick until the end, I will let you know how to proceed. So today our guest is Jennifer Noelle Garibay. She is the founder of J&G Career Consulting. And she's also a recruiter for Google. So she's the perfect person to ask all of these questions about recruitment and how to find a job in these times and how to differentiate yourself from the competition. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, how's it going? How you been doing?
Great. Great. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about your experience and your mission with yourself and the company that you set up.
Yeah, of course. Happy to give you all a little intro elevator pitch to myself. So, as Julia said, I am Jennifer Noelle Garibay. I am a contractor in recruiting at Google currently. I'm actually a staffing channel specialist, which is more like a recruiting partner of sorts, and I help directly look at resumes all day. So I'm really heavily involved in the resume aspect of the hiring process, and I partner with the recruiters in moving forward, deciding who moves on in that way. And in doing that, I encountered a lot of candidates who unfortunately weren't able to move forward in the process. And that's really actually what inspired me to start my own company, was just all of those candidates that unfortunately I was unable to help. In a corporate atmosphere, you're limited a lot of times by what you can say, understandably. And so there's so many candidates who would reach out to me, and I would love to give them specific feedback on what they could do better, but was bound by, legal reasons and things like that. So it really inspired me to start putting content out on LinkedIn, start sharing tips on how to do your resume, how to get your LinkedIn into shape, how to attract recruiters. And so many people really resonated and took value from that. And it just sort of snowballed into a business. And now I'm doing it in addition to my full-time job and helping people develop themselves so that they can land the jobs of their dreams.
Yeah, that's great. I think we need more people like you all over the world, especially right now. My first question is, how do you feel like the market of recruitment has changed during the Corona times? I imagine that you have even more people, applying to jobs. And yeah, I was wondering, what's your perspective on the market?
Yeah, so I think initially, like right at the beginning, like almost a year ago, we saw just like this huge crash in the job market, right?
Yeah.
All these companies pulled back on hiring. Understandably, the future was very uncertain, and no one really knew what was going on. And then during that time, of course, a lot of businesses failed, a lot of small businesses went under. But I'd say towards the beginning of 2020, we saw the larger companies, those that were able to sustain themselves, start to trend upward again. So I do anticipate more hiring taking place in 2021. And in regards to that, I think it's really important to note what COVID has opened up for us in regards to recruiting. So many people were forced to work from home that it made a lot of companies realize how easy it is to have people work from home. And so remote work, which was already on the up and up prior to COVID, is now going to become definitely more of the norm. And in doing that, it gives you a lot more freedom in who you can work with, because then you can have someone maybe in a different country completely that you wouldn't have had an opportunity to be your employee, previously, that now you can work with because this remote sort of environment allows it. So although the job market isn't the best right now currently because it is so saturated and many people are out of work, I'm looking forward to the future. I'm optimistic about where we're going, as well as for the hiring process this year. I know many companies are going to try to do a bigger push since they didn't do one last year. So keep an eye on those job boards, because most of the headcount, I'd say, usually hits around March or April.
Yeah, for sure. And especially I have a lot of people from Egypt and Dubai and Lebanon as well, where everything is saturated at the moment. So indeed, like opening your mind to look for work abroad in a way, in an international company, and be able to work from where you are is a different way of thinking and a different way to browse through the companies. And also you have as many possibilities as people that are on location, which is an amazing thing to think about. I was wondering, like, what kind of questions do you get the most from people that you coach or work with?
Yeah, I would say honestly, and it's been an uptick, I think most people struggle with the job search strategy. They don't
Okay.
know how to go about the job search. And it's really important, I think, to lay out a plan. Many people just out of desperation, which is completely understandable. You're out of work, you need money. I understand that. And sometimes you just need to obtain a job. And that's just what needs to happen for your financial security. But when you have more of the ability to be picky, if you're not in that sort of dire strait, definitely take the time to be a little pickier. I don't recommend just shooting off your applications to 50 different places. You really want to sit down and think about, like, what are my top skills? What am I passionate about? What is my resume already gearing towards? Do I want to stick in that direction? Do I want to pivot? And sort of looking at where all those things meet, because that's where you're going to be the strongest candidate, and be able to contribute the most. So oftentimes it's about tempering expectations. Most people are like, I want to do this thing I love, like right now, today. And I'm like, you can do this thing you love, but it's also about setting yourself up for success to get there. And which I hate saying to people, but it's like, you can have the job of your dreams, but sometimes you got to take those stepping stones to get there. And so sometimes it might be about taking a job that's not your favorite right now, to get where you want to go. So I'd say that's one of the biggest struggles for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's also what I hear. I think a lot of people, well, are a little bit desperate. Like, I have heard stories of people, like, applying for 100 jobs and getting one interview, and out of that, you don't get anything. So first of all, there is the struggle, mentally speaking, of still being aware of your values and what you're trying to achieve career wise, even though you get a lot of rejection. So the first step, like dealing with rejection, is probably one of the hardest things to deal with, right?
For sure.
The second thing is that once people manage to get an interview, if they're not clear about their value and their worth, and also clear about what they're trying to get away from this job, because I mean, companies, they get you to work for them, but you should also get something back, whether it's like a salary or it's experience or learning a software and so on. And there needs to be a compensation back and forth. So that is sometimes not vocalized enough, maybe in the interview, because people are scared to put down their requirements, because there is a lot of candidates. But that actually works in the opposite way. So someone that doesn't show their value or doesn't show what they want to learn falls back in terms of candidate, because they don't yeah, how can I say that? You say it better than me, but
They're just not like presenting themselves right. You know, it's about
exactly.
knowing they're confident and knowing what you want out of the process just as much as what they want out of you.
Yeah.
And really finding where those two things meet. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the hardest thing, I think, because the more you're worn down by all these rejections, the less you think high of yourself and you start doubting. So it's also very important, like you said, defining the values and find companies that have the same values as you, so that you feel also fulfilled in your job, right? Um,
Right.
uh,
Well, and that has so much to do with your personal brand, I'd say as well. I was talking about this with my business coach, and it's that, you know, you can set a goal. I'm going to make $1 million. And there's a lot of ways to achieve that goal, right? You could go
yeah,
about, you know, selling bad things, selling guns, selling whatever. You know, does that mesh with your brand? Does that mesh with the way you want to get to your goal?
yeah,
And so it's the same thing with a company. You want to make sure that they mesh with your brand. Are their values your values?
yeah.
How does that reflect on you and how you see yourself? Because it's going to affect everything in your life, especially your happiness as well. So,
Yeah, for sure. Another question that I have for you is, LinkedIn is the number one platform since March last year. So how can people find a job on LinkedIn, or how can they approach people on LinkedIn?
yeah. So I would say if you're a job seeker and you are looking for a job and you want to use LinkedIn, you definitely need to take a few steps. First, I would say you need to optimize your profile. Optimize your profile for hiring managers, for recruiters, essentially whoever you want going there and looking at it. Make sure it appeals to them.
Yeah,
And additionally, you want to have all your work experience up to date for sure. And once your profile is up to date, then you really want to start engaging with people. I recommend engaging on LinkedIn for at least, 15 minutes, maybe 30 if you have time a day. Engage with people, build your community, build your network, make friends, make connections. Because these really are invaluable people who can help you. I can't tell you how many people I've helped find jobs, or people who come to me all the time saying, hey, I saw this great opportunity. You'd be perfect
yeah,
for it. Would you like to apply? So it's all about building those relationships. And you can do that through engaging. But
yeah,
then additionally, I would say that people also need to be sending targeted connection requests.
yeah,
Make sure you're sending requests to the people who work in the industries, the companies, the locations you want to work in, and start networking with those people specifically, because they're going to have more of an idea of the opportunities that interest you.
yeah,
And the opportunities of where you want to go. So start connecting with those people, send them a quick message. And then lastly, I would say post content. And it's something not enough people do. That's the number one thing that not enough people do, is post content. I mean, only like 1 to 2% of people on LinkedIn post content on a weekly basis. So
yeah,
your ability to drive traffic and to get seen is a lot greater than any other platform. And so if you're just
exactly.
willing to share a little piece of yourself, put yourself out there, it's going to increase your ability to potentially be seen by recruiters, hiring managers, and people who want to work with you.
Yeah, I wanted to add just a couple of points to what you said. I think is very relevant what you said, and building relationships is indeed like you nailed it on the head. I think what surprises me is that a lot of people, especially on LinkedIn, the the most that they do by when they post or when they contact someone is send their CV, which uh, to people that receive it can be a little bit overwhelming, because in a way, like, it doesn't create any type of curiosity from the person, because they have your CV, you're asking for an opportunity, so they tend to be very shy and don't answer straight away, right? So um, how can you uh, get in contact with these people in a more collaborative way?
No, that's a great question. And that is definitely something that happens to me a lot. So it's something I'm passionate about educating people on. Because it's definitely, you want to approach LinkedIn and the DMs, the direct messages, just like you would approach someone on the street. Like pretend like you're walking up to them in person. And if you wouldn't say it to them, a stranger in person, you probably shouldn't say it on LinkedIn. So if you're walking up to someone like desperate, like, please help me, I need a job, here's my resume, look at it right now, look at it, please. Like that, if someone walked up to me on the street like that, I'd be like, hi, I'm sorry, are you on drugs? Do I know you? So it's like, you know, you need to have that tact. You need to message them and have a point to your message. Even if it's just, hey, I would love to connect with you for future opportunities. That's a great way to connect with someone. You don't need to be overly, you know, chatty in the messages, and you definitely don't want to send your CV right away. They may be willing to help you later on, but you need to develop a relationship first. So I recommend trying to connect with them over content or some mutual thing you share in common. You know, when I connect with people locally here in Texas, I might say, hey, I saw you work in big tech and you live in Texas. I love connecting with fellow Texans. Like, let's be friends or something. You know, very simple. Or if it's really like a recruiter or something, you can say, hey, I just love to stay in touch for future opportunities. And they're going to understand. But essentially, you want to not be pushy. And if you can give value initially, that is what you want to try to lead with. You know, if you offer some sort of service, maybe you're a web designer, offer to say, hey, you know, I would love to maybe show you my skills sometime. If you have a project, let me know. You know, you may have to do some free work, some freelance work sometimes to sort of prove your skills to people. But if you're willing to do that and give before you take, that's really how you build effective networking relationships, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's also about becoming an expert and a professional, right? I mean, when you message them, it should be about communal values and, you know, proposing maybe to do a Zoom call to see if there is a potential collaboration. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you're looking for a job, you're below the person that is hiring. You still have your experience and so on. So, and that's the same for the post. So a lot of people post their CV instead of actually what would be better is probably to show your value and problems that you managed to solve during your career and how you went about it. And that is much more impactful because people remember you for a story or for a fact that you post rather than just the CV that is just, you know, there. Yeah, guys, ask questions. I see that a lot of people are commenting, but you're allowed to ask any questions and we will take them as well. Another point that I wanted to touch upon is the problematic of people who just graduated. Because something is applying as someone that has a lot of background in what they're doing, and something is applying as a graduate. So I wanted your thoughts on that as well. What are some tips that graduate can use to find a job?
Yeah, of course. So my tip for graduates is, you know, use everything you have. You know, if you've been working side jobs, side skills, waiting tables, doing anything like that, anything you may not think is professional, include it all. All those experiences are valuable, especially when you're just starting out. Additionally, I would say if there's any sort of projects or academia that you've been working on, you know, using that web designer example again, they'll likely have examples of projects they worked on in college and things like that. Definitely include those in your CV or resume as well. You know, it shows what you've been able to accomplish. If you have any data or metrics to accompany those projects, definitely make sure you include them as well. Recommendations are great for new grads as well, if you can and get some of those on your LinkedIn, on your resume. So yeah, I would really recommend focusing on those transferable skills from those early experiences, and then network. As a new grad, you know, LinkedIn is your friend. I tell people all the time that, you know, it's like I see people on LinkedIn and it's like they're trying to take a nail and they're trying to hammer it with their hand. And I'm like, LinkedIn is like the hammer. You pick it up and it makes it so much easier to hammer the nail if you allow yourself to use it for the tool that it's meant to be. And so really networking and building relationships to sort of find those more entry-level positions and connect with people who are going to be able to give you those opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. You're completely right. Um, for graduates, especially, I think the biggest struggle is that a lot of companies, especially in our industry, people tend to hire graduates for free or for a very small amount, just to make them have the experience, and their thought is, okay, I'm giving you your first job, so you should just, sit down and do the work so I can put that on your CV. I don't know what is your side, from your experience, what you have experienced, but there is, especially in the architecture field, people taking really advantage of this situation.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. I hate to hear that. You should never be taking advantage of anyone, but especially these poor new grads coming out who know nothing about the workforce.
Yeah,
Definitely not them. They need mentoring and educating and special coaching and nurturing. So
yeah.
uh, yeah, definitely find a mentor would be another thing, I think.
Hmm.
If you have anyone who you know, trust, who works in the field, or just use LinkedIn to potentially find a mentor who's going to be able to help guide you. Because I know that has been invaluable to me along the
Sure.
way, are my mentors and people who have helped me.
Yeah, agreed. I also, sorry, we have a question. Let's take a question and then I'll continue. Would you recommend reaching out to my network through direct messaging and educating them about cryptocurrency and help pump up the price? That's an interesting question.
So I would say if you want to educate people about that, especially because crypto, I get a lot of messages like that, and it can seem spammy sometimes if you don't know how to approach it correctly, especially if people don't know a lot about crypto and what it's all about, like myself included. I would say that your best bet is to build up your authority within your space and on LinkedIn. And I would say that you can do that through posting. So I would start posting about crypto, start making a video educating people about crypto, start approaching it from that aspect. And then people in your network are going to learn that you know what you're talking about and that you have an authority within that space. And then they'll reach out to you when they need, education or when they need services. So it's about putting yourself out there so that people come to you rather than having to do it the other way around.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about personal branding a lot, actually. A lot of the talk that we do is about personal branding and be out there and be visible for your expertise so that people come to you instead of you going to them. That's true for employment, but it's also true for business in general. I mean, a lot of the tips that Jennifer is sharing can apply to anyone that is starting their business or that wants more clients for the business too. There is another category of professionals that is suffering right now, and those are people that are in senior positions and that have been in their previous jobs for many years and that find themselves on the job hunt, and unfortunately they maybe don't know the latest softwares or have been exposed to the job hunting market for years. um, do you have any advice for these people as well, because they have a lot of families and a family to sustain as well, so they are really like under pressure at the moment, so
Yeah, no, that's understandable. I would say if you're more experienced and you're feeling lost in the job force, again, a mentor is going to be invaluable, but a career coach could be really something you could potentially benefit from. It's even professional athletes have coaches, right?
yeah.
Whether it be soccer players, basketball players, everyone needs someone to help walk them through the process because you can't know it all. You can't know it all. Things change. Things are constantly moving. So call people in, call backup in to help you in that case, I would say. Look at where you want to go. Find that strategic way to approach the job search. Is this person trying to pivot? Are they trying to stick with where they're going? Where are the passions meeting the skills and finding that sweet spot and moving forward with them in that way. So I would say really doing that, as well as, of course, focusing on your LinkedIn, because especially if you're senior and you have the experience, it's going to be that much easier for you to network and that much
Yeah.
easier for you to obtain a position versus the new grads. So honestly, if you approach it from the same perspective, you're going to be even more successful.
Yeah, true. That's very true. I have another question also for you. Sorry, I have so many questions
No,
to
it's all
answer. There is also the discussion about um, people that are extrovert and people that are introvert.
good.
So I think that people go about it differently in an interview or on their presence on LinkedIn if they're an introvert rather than an extrovert. Um, so how can introvert, because extrovert usually, they're like, okay, I'll make a video, or like, okay, I'll network. It's more common to see extrovert to take charge. So I was wondering what you would advise for introvert that maybe don't necessarily like cameras, or like don't necessarily want to be the center of attention during an interview. How would you say they can leverage their skills in order to get the job that they want?
Yeah. So if you're more of an introvert and you don't like putting yourself out there as much, I would say that you really need to take advantage of academia then and upskilling and making yourself better in that way. So are there Coursera courses you can be taking right now? Are there LinkedIn courses you can be taking to upskill yourself in other ways? People may have that advantage on you in the sense that they can communicate more effectively, or that they're more comfortable. And so you have to find your edge in other ways. You can find it in your knowledge, in your ability to process or analyze things. So I think it's all about leaning into what you're comfortable with, what you're passionate about, what you're really strong at, and just like 10xing whatever that is. Whatever you're great at, just really lean into it. And it almost always, I've never heard of it not producing for someone when you have that passion and when you really allow it to take you in that direction, and then keep your mind open to different opportunities. Because oftentimes opportunities will come in the weirdest little boxes that you're like, what is this? This doesn't look normal. And then you open it and you're like, wow, this is great. It's wonderful. But you have to be willing to see it that way and experience that.
Yeah, I understand. You're right. There is another question for us. I tried many times to get remote jobs, and I thought I'm good at my work, but my location that I live was negative. Well, it was a negative point for the client. So yeah, indeed, a lot of, especially people that apply from North Africa or Asia, sometimes they face prejudices from European or US based companies. So it can definitely be really difficult in a way to apply to these jobs. Do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, one of my biggest recommendations, I would say, if you're applying to jobs in the US, if you're applying, honestly, I'm not as familiar with Europe. Obviously, I live in the US, but if you're applying with a job in the US, use a resume. You may have a CV for stuff more local, and that's fine. I understand that there's very big differences, but I highly, highly recommend that when you're applying to roles in the US, make a US traditional based resume. And if you need help with that, feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure Giulia knows what she's talking about in that regard as well. But it's important that you put it in that format, because so many recruiters are not really familiar with CVs. And so many of them have a ton of additional information that recruiters in the US really are not looking for. It's, a lot of extra stuff about your personal life and all that. Where they're really just looking for that more, slim resume, easy to read, clean data sort of approach. So I would recommend applying with a regular resume, as well as, if you're not already fluent, working on your fluency and making sure that your resume is in good quality English. I know that is something that counts candidates out a lot of the time, is that you could be perfect for a role, but unfortunately, if you're not fluent and it doesn't read on the page as fluent, you're not going to move forward in the process. So that is important as well. And then also just bearing in mind that with COVID right now, most places are looking more locally. They're looking more locally for candidates. And I don't say that to discourage people, but I also don't want people wasting their time applying for a bunch of applications overseas, when in all reality, from my opinion and from the trends I've seen, I don't anticipate a lot of international candidates being chosen, at least not until things settle down a little bit more with COVID. So I would recommend looking into remote positions and staying more local. But towards the end of 2021, I would say it would be a good time to start sending those international applications out a little bit more.
Yeah, and it's also about, culturally speaking, when you apply abroad, the way that a CV looks is probably different according to the country that you apply to. Also, the way you present yourself may be slightly different. So indeed, I would say get someone that can advise you on that, and that is local, to help you through it, because the way that you do in Europe, they ask, for instance, for a letter of motivation, and then they ask you for your portfolio, and then they ask you for your CV. I mean, every country is a little bit different, and I can understand that coming from a different country, you have to kind of adapt that. Otherwise, you can see straight away that you're not from the place itself. So that's also something to bear in mind. Also, the personal branding is very different according to the country. In North Africa, for instance, the posts are less graphic, and it's more about the knowledge and the content. And sometimes in Western countries, it's more about the quality of the image and the sound in order to attract people. So, you need to kind of adapt to these differences as well. We have another question from Henry. If we were to change employer during COVID, how can I develop a rapport with a new employer without face-to-face interaction? How can I attain job security?
So I would say without face-to-face interaction, you want to learn your new employer's style. And maybe that's having a conversation with them. Maybe that's giving them something to fill out. But you want to learn how they like to communicate, because everyone's very different in that way. I know on my team, we have like instant message. Some people like to do that. Some people prefer you email them. Some people prefer to video chat with you. And it's about respecting people's different styles of working, what works for them, what they like, and trying to lean into that and navigate that as well as your own working style as well. Because obviously you don't need to sacrifice what works for you. But I would say set up a meeting with your employer and talk about that. How often should we touch base on projects? How often should we be communicating? When we're communicating, what method are we using? And establishing this sort of cadence so that there is no space for ambiguity. You know exactly what's expected of you, exactly how to proceed forward. And then additionally, if you work with anyone else besides just your one employer, if you're in a team atmosphere, I would say try to plan some team activities, maybe have a team chat once a week or something like that. It's important to speak to those you work with, at least semi-often to continue to develop that rapport.
Yeah, for sure. You're so on point. Do you have a specific structure for the interview that you would advise people to have? Because I'm guessing it's not just about, you have to get a little bit of control over the interview as well. I mean, it's not like you're gonna sit there and just answer the questions that the person is asking you, and then that's it, right? Is there a structure that people can use?
Yeah. So are you talking about the interview with the employer or just an interview in general?
With the employer mainly, yeah. Or with the HR person.
I would say to have something prepared. I always like to have questions prepared, go into an interview with what you want to ask as well. Especially if it's not like a traditional job interview, but more like just like a let's get to know working styles or something like that. Go in with your questions, make sure you're going to hit everything you need to get all the information you need. And I would say one of my biggest things is to actively listen, really try to sit there and digest what they're saying, because too often we zone out, right? It's been proven that humans do that all the time. So it's about really tuning in and actively listening. And sometimes you have to remind yourself every 30 seconds, yes, I'm I'm really paying attention, and really absorb everything they have to say. And just ask questions, ask a ton of questions until you feel comfortable. That's what your employer is there for, to support you and answer questions, assuming they're a good boss. And if they don't want to support you and answer questions, then maybe you don't need to be working there.
Yeah, for sure. There's always like one thing. I mean, I did many interviews in my life, but there's always at the end of the interview, the recruiter or the employer asks you, do you have questions for me? And I always I don't have an answer to that. I mean, what kind of answer are they expecting? This is my question to you.
So I don't think that there's any expectation. I think that there's like a breadth. I mean, they want you to ask something. They want you to care about the company. So for me, I typically ask, like, what's a day to day in this role going to be like? Like, walk me through an average day in this role. Tell me more about the culture in this role. What if I wasn't on this team, what would a teammate say about, how this team operates? Another one I love to ask is, what would you like to see accomplished in this role within the next 90 days? And how can I help us accomplish that task? So it's very much so gearing up for the role, very much so, where are we headed? I want to hit the ground running. How can I be of use? Where are we going? And it's a very confident question as well. So that's one of my favorite ones to end an interview with.
Yeah, I can imagine. Is there anything else you would like to share with us in terms of strategy or in terms of, encouraging people to apply more and not give up?
Yeah, no, I would love to say that the process is really, really long sometimes, and to not get discouraged. Because so often we think that there's something wrong with our resume, that there's something wrong with XYZ, when more often than not, it's just that, the timing wasn't right, or there may have been someone who was just slightly more qualified than you. So don't take rejection as you are bad, you're not qualified, we don't want you. More often than not, it's just timing. It's just timing, and it didn't work out. So don't get discouraged in your skills. Don't get discouraged in what you have to offer. Stay true to what kind of company you want to be a part of. Make sure you're looking at culture, make sure you're looking to make sure that their brand matches with your personal brand. And just get out there on LinkedIn, start sharing yourself with the world, start carving out, your personal brand, your expertise, and get your resume into great shape. And that's pretty much all you can do these days. And then just try, find jobs that work for you, tailor your resume, and network every day. And I think if you guys follow that regimen, you will be successful sometime soon.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I have one last question. All right. Then I'll let you off with all these questions. But there is a lot of job opportunities where you go to the interview and then they tell you are overqualified. Now, I'm wondering, like, from the recruiter perspective, where does that come from, and why people think that this is a bad thing instead of a positive thing?
So when a recruiter is telling you you're overqualified, a lot of times most of the time it has to do with money. It has to do with them not being able to pay you likely what you deserve. Because if you're overqualified, this role, the company may say, we're only willing to spend $100,000 max. And maybe with how qualified you are, they know that you're worth 130. And they don't feel comfortable giving you less, and it wouldn't be right for them to. And legally, you could come back and then say, like, why wasn't I being compensated appropriately? So it's like, it's about managing, what level is this role? Because that's something that people don't see on the back end. When job seekers are looking at a job, they can't see it. But on our end, there's ranges and things like that, So it's on the recruiter beforehand, I think, to really look and see, like, is this person in the right range? And then sometimes you can interview them and just realize that they're just a rock star and they're too qualified for this. And so, that means that they're trying to push you to somewhere where you're going to be able to make more impact, more change, where you're going to be better suited. And so I would usually, don't take that as a bad thing. They're trying to make sure you get what you're worth. But if you really do like the job and you're willing to take less pay and you're willing to, because I've had that happen before too, where people are like, I want to come to this company and I don't care if I have to take a pay cut to get there.
Yeah, exactly.
Just make sure you have that conversation with the recruiter beforehand and say, hey, I'm willing to be demoted. I'm willing to do this. Because generally recruiters are assuming that you're wanting to continue on. So if you're willing to, you need to make it clear that that's okay with you.
Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you so much for all these tips and your knowledge about this recruitment market and how to overcome it. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to discuss, to talk about the workshop that we're gonna have for people who are looking currently for a job, especially architects and engineers. We are gonna launch soon a workshop, and I also asked Jennifer to be part of it, where we can help you guys to find a dream job in less time. So we're talking about learning how to pitch, learning how to present yourself, learning how to be a presence on social media, how to contact people, etc., etc. So basically, everything that we discussed today will be part of this workshop. Unfortunately, we can't take everyone on this workshop, so I thought that it would be maybe nice to have you guys to basically do a small video of yourself, introducing yourself and what job you're aspiring to get, and send it to the email here below. And we will make a selections of the people who will be selected for the workshop. The workshop will have a fee, but the fee will be returned if you finish the workshop with us. So as long as you do all the sessions with us, we will return the money to you once you have finished the workshop. So it's just to make sure that we don't take all this time and then at the last workshop there is nobody left, right? So so please apply, send your videos. We're looking forward to it. You can also email your questions through this info@theibdcompany.com, and we will answer you through there. Also, if you want to follow our podcast, you can go on the IBD podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube. And Jennifer, tell us where people can find you, because you do also lives about everything. So
yes. Please, if you aren't connected with me on LinkedIn, feel free to connect with me. My name on LinkedIn is Jennifer Noelle Garibay. I probably should update it on StreamYard. Jennifer Noelle Garibay. And you can also find me on YouTube, Jennifer Noelle Garibay. Feel free to visit my website, jngcareerconsulting.com. Would love to connect with you guys and make some new friends.
Yes. Well, great. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I think that a lot of people enjoyed our session. So thank you guys for being here weekly as well. And I see you next week.